Welcome to the first YouTube episode of Cut the Bullshit. I'm very excited for this to happen. This is going to be a great thing. Took a while to get here, but you know, it's gonna be exciting. So let's get into it. You guys have really loved talking about trauma, and you guys have also really loved talking about sex. So I thought, why not put the two together and let's talk about trauma and sex. It's a crazy important thing. It's something that I feel like if a lot of people paid attention to, it would be so much easier for us to understand ourselves and to understand like where we come from, to connect with our partners, to go and have long-term relationships rather than being so scared because we're so confused of why we don't like sex with this person, why we don't like an experience with this person. And one thing that I want to address is the actual definition of a kink, because there's a fetish and a kink, and they're both pretty similar. But I always write this down. I'm going to show you guys actually this, because I know I mentioned this in my audio podcast, that I love to write stuff down. So you guys are always I'm just constantly going to be here. But anyways, a sexual taste or a non-traditional sexual intimate desire, practice, or fantasy. That is a kink's definition. And it also falls outside of romantic intercourse. So it's kind of things that you don't particularly think are going to be involved in sex. You know, it's I wouldn't think that that's something that someone likes during sex. One of those things would preferably be, choking. Most people are thinking oh my God, if you're choking someone, you want to kill them. A lot of people actually like that during sex. A bunch of other things that people like are fantasies. People do the sexual fantasies are cosplay kind of, you want to dress in a sexy outfit, there's the cop, the robber, however you want to put it. There's always little maid outfit, stuff like that. People go definitely more into detail about it. If you're ever on any type of website, a personal subscription website or anything like that, you'll find that that's a lot more of a thing in that sense, because some people aren't comfortable revealing that part of themselves. So one thing that I have noticed, and as the person that I am, is sometimes it takes a long time for someone to get comfortable with one partner. And a lot of times having trauma, people get what is hypersexuality, or they're a nympho. They're just they get very bored fast. It's oh, one person doesn't want to do this, so I'm going to go on to the next person, or I'm not satisfied because they're not doing this, so I'm going to go on to the next person. And first, let me say that there's nothing wrong with that. Your sexual preferences, you as a person, if anyone judges you for what you do, how you do it, and who you do it with, they're uncomfortable with themselves. Because I've come across a lot of people, and we always talk about bodies in this day and age. A lot of people are always oh, if you have so many bodies, it's not what everyone likes. But it's actually a very good experience to hear from other people who have gone and been with multiple partners, because the connection can be deeper, and everyone looks at sex completely different. You might run into someone who is open to your ideas, and you might run into someone who will teach you new ideas, and doing that can actually open you up to your trauma, and you can figure out it comes better ways to cope with it. I used to have sex like this, and I met this person, and they're showing me a better way to maintain my sex or cope with it, or certain kinks. Some people just crazy kinks, and they'll meet a partner that will talk to them about it, where does this kink come from, why do you like this. Really good book that I read and I really actually recommend is called Eeny Meeny. Kind of mystery book, if you like that. And in it there is an Eeny Meeny. Definitely recommend it. It's a really good book. It's about a private investigator. It's kind of crazy because it has a storyline of Saw. So if you like all the Saws, you're absolutely going to love this book. It is a private investigator, and going into it, it gets more in detail about her life and everything that she went through. She had a very stern childhood, right? And so it finally cuts to the chapter, and it starts talking about her sexual experiences. And she actually pays what would be an escort to come to her home. What she actually got really close with this, I'm not even going to try and put in the details, it's such a good book, but she got really close with the escort, became her only escort that she uses, and he would actually come in, tie her up, and she would be on some type of kind of a bondage thing, if you know what that is. Just has to do with a lot of ropes, a lot of tying, a lot of people like that. That is 110% kink, they like to be held and just in a tight, closed space. And so she would have her wrists bound and her ankles bound, and he would whip her. And what I mean by whip her And when he would whip her, it was like almost a stress reliever for her. So that's what I say whenever, you talk to people and you come out about your kinks, and someone may start to realize like, hey, this is a very deep, almost dangerous situation or kink. So that's what I mean whenever you meet a partner and they'll tell you kind of more about your kinks, and like they can open you up to things. Like me, I didn't know that I was hypersexual until I talked to someone else who was hypersexual, and they helped me understand that I have to slow down my thoughts and my assumptions, that there's never gonna be somebody out there for me. There's never gonna be someone out there who can specifically satisfy me, and that I don't need to go and find more excitement somewhere else. I need to find excitement within myself, in my own situation. Finding someone to specifically satisfy me wasn't what I needed to do. I needed to be satisfied with myself, and I needed to figure out a little bit more about myself to understand why this constantly goes through my head. And one thing about trauma is trauma doesn't go away until you address it. So, if you go on and you move from partner to partner and trying to find something meaningful and grasping onto the little things that everyone is giving you, no matter how small it is, you want it, right? Because that it's attention, it's love, it's praise, and it may be whipping, it may be harm, and that's just something you have to discover about yourself. And the honest truth is being honest with yourself about where certain things come from. And trauma is it's a very sensitive topic, and I completely understand that. And especially if you were sexualized a little bit early, it becomes a little bit tougher to understand that there's different ways that sex is looked at, and there's different ways that you are viewed. As a woman, I will say for my ladies, this one is for you, because a lot of men don't understand what it's like for us out in the world. And that's not to say that men don't go through the same at all. But for a woman, you walk around and you can walk around in a big t-shirt, sweatpants, you're getting catcalled, whistled at, and everything like that. Well, if that started when you were 12 years old, that kind of becomes an uncomfortable thing. You kind of think that that's what you deserve. So what do you think? You probably deserve that attention from everyone. And that's the kind of attention that you look for. Someone who praises you, But that's all they do. They don't exactly treat you the best. And that's why sex is very important, because sex plays a large role in a relationship. So a lot of people will get into a relationship because of sex. Oh, the sex is great, but you won't have a good sex life or a good social life. Your sex life will be amazing, and everything is so wonderful about that, and it's so easy to get stuck up in that you lose track of oh wow, these things are important. One thing that I noticed, as a female, with my female friends and anything like that, they often tend to be in relationships and they start to just tear off little pieces of their life, and hanging out. You stop hanging out with your friends because that person just always wants you to themselves, but you're not that type of person. You're a very social, loving person. You love to go out, you love to party, you love to hang out with your friends. They may be insecure, they may have anxiety, that may just not be the life that they want to live, but you put yourself in a position to have to learn to deal with that. Or you have to go and you have to leave. Those are the only things that you can do. There's nothing else. Being in a relationship that's just based off sex, it deteriorates everything about your life. Hanging out with friends. In a relationship that I was in, I loved to hang out with my friends and I loved to be around them. And then I met a person who wanted me around all the time. And then they started to use guilt, and then they started to use manipulation, and then they started to use gaslighting, So the importance of sex in the last episode that I talked about at the audio is very, very, very important. And this is exactly why. Because when you get into a relationship, it's going to define more than important things in sex that I talked about in the last episode, is basically pleasure, and sometimes we don't know how to be pleasured. And that's also has to do with our trauma. And one thing that can happen that can be traumatic is being ignored and not having your feelings validated, or your pleasures validated. And something that I know a lot of women go through is they never reach that climax. They never reach that relief, And there's women who have had sex for years and years and years and years. And as all of you know, I'm pansexual. I love everything, I love women. So I've been with women, and I've ran into women, and they've told me, and they're oh, I've never climaxed before. I've never gotten that relief. And that's something that as time goes on, from one experience to 2 experiences to 3 experiences to 4, there may be on their 10th experience with somebody. And still they haven't gotten that climax. That can become something that can be very traumatic because you don't know what goes on during that time. You know, it could be a simple, they just don't care and they just disregard that person's feelings, and they simply just move on past it. You know, they never come back and say, hey, well, what can I do for you? And it's so crazy to me, guys, like how much this isn't taught and how much no one acknowledges things like these, because sex is not just going from body to body. You're not racking up just body. You're racking up a mental, you're racking up an energy, you're racking up a type of idea of a person, and you're seeing this person at a much more of an intimate level, you know, and that's not for everybody. I am not a very intimate person with everybody. You know, I could stand in the face of someone that I may simply enjoy like being with and everything like that, but I'll never get intimate with them. You know, I don't ever need to touch them. I don't ever need to go and have sex with them, but they can still be someone that I love and I care for and everything like that. Even in partnerships, you know, I've been in partnerships where I've needed to leave because I felt like I couldn't give all of my love, you know, and that has nothing to do with me, or that has nothing to do with them. That has everything to do with me. But most of the time, it doesn't have anything to do that I did to myself. It has something to do with trauma. And so it's great to address that in every aspect. And it's great to have a partner who understands your trauma. You really do have to understand that. You have to have a partner who understands you. And a lot of people just deal with certain things, you know, like something will happen and this is what they think that they deal with, you know? And like I said, like women will be in a relationship and there's nothing else but good sex. That's it. You know, he can't bring anything to your table or you can't bring anything to his. And today and age, a lot of men will vouch for that. That's why I said it's not just women. Just a lot of women get mistreated during sex. That's all. But men don't always get more than sex. Like that's it. You know, they have a great woman who can do that and that's it. You know, she can't cook. I mean, every man loves that. She can't clean. She has no ambition. She has no motivation. You know, she has no own voice for herself. She's very secluded. That's all that she can offer. You know, she may have a bad attitude. She may not want to deal with her traumas. And it is no one's fault to deal with that. And I want you to understand that, you know, what you go through, you can't go up to the next person and say, well, I went through this, and you have to deal with it. Absolutely not. 110% you don't. You can walk away. Having a partner that understands your traumas is just as important as them understanding you sexually. It's just as important as them understanding the moments that you have where, you know, you're down and you can't pick yourself back up. And a lot of things that happen during sex aren't put out on websites, aren't put out on, you know, anything. We don't ever talk about that. This idea that we have sex comes from the movies and from the internet, you know, and it's all pretty everything, you know, perfect, petite, and beautiful, and all of this. But no one talks about that. People cry during sex because either the moment is so beautiful and it feels so great and it's just like, wow, I'm having this amazing connection with somebody. Or it all stops and they're having literally a mental breakdown because they're remembering something, or maybe something's going on in that sexual moment that brings them back to a trauma, you know? Sometimes like there's laughter and like you're laughing about funny things, whether, you know, something happened that was hilarious, or, you know, you think of like an idea, maybe it was a past time with that person. Not saying, you know, you think about some, don't think about anyone else during sex. It'll ruin it. It's over at that point. But you know, there's just certain things that we like think about. Like I know whenever I need to cry because my eyes get all teary, and that can happen during sex. You know, a lot of things can happen during sex. A lot of weird things can happen during sex. People can get angry during sex. You can get very happy during sex. I mean, you're releasing a bunch of like pheromones. Like it's all just going out and you're just releasing an energy. That's what I try and tell people all the time. You are releasing an energy every time that you have sex. That is like the most important thing. And that is the most important thing to find a partner, because that energy can be sometimes overbearing. And there's different people in sex, and going back to kinks, you know, and that's where it all goes right back to, because that's going to determine your sex life and what you like. Someone may like it aggressive, and maybe, you know, that comes from they were abused when they were a child, and that's all that they know, you know, and it's just become the way that they cope with it is they turn it into a pleasure. And that's exactly what I did. I became hypersexual because I turned sex into a coping mechanism. And this is called cut the bullshit for a reason. I'm never going to lie to you guys. That was a very hard thing for me to learn about myself, because I, in my experiences, used to look at myself and I would say, like, I'm here to please everybody else. You know, I have a beautiful body, I look this way, and all this stuff just to please anybody else. I never cared about myself. I never cared about the fact that I deserved to feel pleasure. I deserved to feel loved. I deserved, you know, for my kinks and my fantasies and my fetishes, whatever, I deserve for those to be heard. But oftentimes, because of experiences I've had in the past, I was completely looked over. So whenever it came that I found a partner, and I like will never forget whenever I first had like, you know, my first like happy experience with sex, and it wasn't like a traumatic one, or it wasn't like a like, you know, like, oh, like 2 seconds and everything's done and I'm not cared for, I'm not talked about or anything like that. It was the first time that I had actually been asked like, what do you like? And I literally sat there and I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I just like to be here, you know, for you. And they're like, no, what do you like? Like, what gets, you know, I understand that you like to please, but that's not really what you like to do. And that's whatever that person helped me realize, holy crap, I'm very hypersexual, and I continue to go like time and time again to look for different things, or I try to change someone and, you know, try and get them to like my kinks or figure them out deeply, but I can't, because it's just not the person that I want to be with. And I never needed to go and look for other partners. I needed to find what made me happy, and whatever makes me happy, it's gonna get drawn to me. And that's why I say sexual energy is so important, inside or outside. I'm not sure if I actually talked about this. This is kind of like off topic of this, but it's a very important thing that I want you guys to understand. You can do it in a relationship. You can actually manifest off of this stuff. So this is very interesting. I learned this a while ago from a mentor of mine, and they helped me understand this because I wanted to feel like my manifestation was working. I wanted like a sensation, you know, like whether it was a tingle through my body or like a voice in my head or whatever, you know, a light bulb pops up on the top of my head, like I wanted something. And she told me, and she was like, why don't you try like climax manifestation? And I was like, what the hell is that? You know, like that, I never heard of that, I never thought of that, I never even knew that was a thing. And she told me about sexual energy, and I dove into it, and it was a sinkhole. It was the bottom of it. Because one thing in our world today, like one thing we like to say is sex sells. Absolutely sex sells, but when people look at it, it's just sex. And I hear that so many times, it's just sex. Oh, it's just sex, it doesn't really matter like that. But it's like, wow, people don't really realize how powerful that this is. And sex can ruin or make a relationship. You know, it can create things. It creates children. One of the most innocent, purest, beautiful things that has ever entered this earth. It creates that. You know, and people look at it like, yeah, whatever. You know, I had sex with her, so what? You know, it's nothing big. You know, she didn't get to finish. It's nothing big. It's nothing important. But all of that stuff starts to rack up, and it starts to weigh you down. And I tell a lot of people who look at sex as just something to do, just something fun. You know, you're bored, go have sex with somebody, you know, or people who are nymphos and like they're very, very hypersexual and they haven't gotten control of it, you know, and they use it as like, oh, I haven't had sex today, like, oh, I'm gonna die, you know, like I have to have sex. And that becomes very complicated for you and your energy. So time after time, you know, you continue to try and find a partner and you continue to have sex that just means nothing to you. And you kind of start to notice that your mood might be a little bit down. You know, you kind of start to realize that maybe during sex, you know, a lot maybe is going through your head, or maybe oftentimes a lot's going through your head. And it's not all that matters at all, 110%, but people just don't make it as important as it needs to be. Because again, people just think that it's just sex. But the fun thing about the manifestation, whenever you do this, is it's mostly solo with yourself. But if you do have a couple and a partner, you can manifest a baby, you know, and it works, you know. It's putting a divine power together, a divine energy, and a genuine energy. That's why I say it has to be the partner that understands you. It has to be the partner that, you know, genuinely cherishes you. They don't have to, you know, love you. Not everyone believes in having sex with someone that loves you, but they don't have to love you in a relationship. They can just love your body. They can love your mind. They can love everything about you, and they can love that connection. You can feel very intimate with them. And, you know, you can manifest things, you know, whether it's you and your couple are trying to start a business together and you want to manifest that. Use that moment to embrace each other's energy and put that together, because you're literally right there. Like you're in each other's energy, and it's really the only way that we are, and people don't really look at it like that. And a lot of people look at sex as a sacred thing, which is really, I'm gonna get more into that one day, because I kind of wonder, if you think it's very sacred and everything, do you have kinks? You know, I feel like maybe I should have a guess. I'll just sit here and be like, hey, since you find this so sacred in your religion, do you like kinks? You know, it's mostly in religions, but if they're open for it. But you know, a lot of people find it sacred, and that's why those people believe it's an energy, and I can't just give it to anybody. And like I said before, if you do that, it is okay. That is the wide range of sex is just, it's huge, you know? What is defining whore? What is defining someone who does it for a job, you know? And people look at that, oh my God, you can't do that. You know, that's gross. I would never do that. You know, and then you meet another person who's like, hey, do you know, live your life, live what makes you happy, do what makes you happy, but don't do anything that you feel forced. Don't do anything where your energy feels wasted. Don't do anything with a partner who doesn't love everything about you, because they can just throw you away like a towel. Like there's this, I think it was in a song or something, but it literally said like, you know, once, like for girls, you know, once you're home, like once a boy hits, now you're just a friend, you know? That's it. Before it was, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful, I love this about you, I love this about you. You know, the hit and it's, hey, what's up, homie? Like, what? Like, literally just a week ago, you know, we were on a whole other level, and you can get confused by that. And a lot of girls usually do, you know, they're like, I'm so obsessed with him, I'm so obsessed with him. This is also just a study, you can look it up. Narcissists are usually in men. It's just, I don't know why, it's just a thing. But that's also because of society. Narcissism, I think, is definitely something that is implicated by society a lot. But you know, a lot of them are narcissists, and they'll just think like, oh, you know, whatever. And like, I've seen so many times with even my friends, you know, they'll go up to a boy that they told me about, I'll walk up to him, hey, da-da-da, and they just act like they don't know at all. You know how degrading that is for a woman? It may feel like it's absolutely nothing to you, but you know how degrading that is. You know, our parts are called lotus flowers, which is innocent and beautiful. If you've ever seen a lotus flower, they're absolutely beautiful. I love them. Lotus Flower Bomb, very popular song. You haven't listened to that. That's what it talks about. It's talking about a woman's parts. So if you're a male, and I'm telling you this right now, if you're doing that to women, it's not something you want to do, you know? And it may seem like it's nothing new. I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm just here to open it. I'm just here to tell you that not everything has to be meaningless. And I find sex to be a very happy thing for me. I find it to be a very interesting thing to me. I find it to be a lot to get to know a person. After sex conversations, I feel like that should be a kink, because I really like those. But after sex conversations can open your mind up to a lot, because like I said, you're letting out all of this energy and just everything, and you're relieving. It's a like a stress reliever, you know, everything. It just lets out it all. So like my favorite thing is, by the end of it, sometimes your mind is a little bit open to more of a conversation because you had a climax, and it's like, whew, you know, I feel so much better. And you continue to have conversations. Some of my best conversations, some of my best ideas have come from after sex, because my mind was so blocked and I just wanted to feel pleased. I just wanted to feel loved on. I just wanted to feel a sensation that gave me goosebumps. And that's what it does. You know, it's like, if you've ever been overstimulated, I often get like really overstimulated, like whenever really good things happen, and I get like shaky, you know, and I get like these goosebumps. And sometimes, like whether during climax or after climax, that's how I feel, you know? And it's just like this wonderful, happy sensation. It's almost like your mind is clear, and it makes a lot of people happy. So rooting back to kinks, don't be afraid to share your kinks. Don't be afraid to have a new kink. Don't be afraid to embrace your trauma and learn about it. And if you do have an unhealthy kink, you know, like I mentioned, eeny meeny, the whipping and everything, there is nothing wrong with it, but I just hope that you find peace in your mind, you know, and I hope that maybe you won't do anything that harms you, you know, and, or maybe, you know, if you're having sex right now and you're not focusing on yourself, I hope that you do. I hope that you realize how important that you are and how important your sexual energy being out in the world is. It's very important for you to feel that and to understand your body. Take time to sit down and write. That's why I like to show you guys that I write a lot. I write a lot. I have a lot of notebooks. I probably have like 5 notebooks. None of them are finished, but it's just things that I want to write down, things that I want to remember, manifestations and everything like that. In my journal is when I write a lot about my sex. And so in my journal, I wrote down everything that makes me feel good during sex. Write down your turn-ons and your turn-offs, you know? Understand what those are and set boundaries. Set boundaries during, you know, if you don't like something, set that and just say like, hey, listen, I know that you may be into this, but for me, I'm not, you know, could we not do that? And that just makes it a lot easier for people to understand things. If there's something that you need to address, And there's some things I'm not going to talk about, but if there is something that has happened to you, a very awful experience that you did not consent to, address that. It hurts a lot, and I understand that, and it's a lot of pain. But once you figure out that, I think that sex will become enjoyable for you again. Don't listen to anyone. There is sexual therapists, by the way. Don't listen to anyone if you don't want to do that. Personally, I actually do like sex therapists. They're very nice. They're very kind, very understanding, very open to kinks. And that's where a lot of kinks were figured out, was therapy. You know, people would talk about it, and some therapists would be like, okay, well, tell me about your sex life. And then, you know, that's whenever people started figuring out like whipping and like all of this painful stuff that happened. And that's why they created sex therapy, because it's like, whoa, a lot of people's stress and trauma falls into their sex life. Some people actually can't, you know, finish because their life is so stressful, or they're not paying attention to what they need in sex. They're not getting what they want out of sex. And it's so weird to actually sit there and ask yourself those questions. I mean, me, I'm 20, you know? I have so many years to figure out what I like and what I don't like. But already, I'm figuring it out, and I'm starting to be open to certain things. You know, I meet people and they're like, hey, this is my kink. And I'm like, huh, that's a new one. You know, or they're like, hey, I like doing this. And then it turns out that I like doing that. And that's what connects you to people. You know, it's like, oh, with this person, they taught me this. With this person, they gave me my first climax. Everyone, for the most part, remembers who they lost their virginity to. Because it's important. It was the first person who, whether climax or not, gave you that sexual energy. It's that first person who opened you up to this whole new world. And like I said, sex sells, so sex is everywhere. You don't even know it. Sometimes you pass in a sex store. Sometimes there's homeless people having sex on the road. It's crazy when you see that stuff, by the way. Sometimes people have sex in cars. You know, like, sex happens all around. Like I said, it creates children. People do it as a stress reliever. People do it for work. And that's why there's such a wide range of things that can be talked about. And going to therapy, I honestly, I haven't been, but I have talked to one. I just did like a little Zoom call every once in a while. And then it turned out I had a friend who was really interested in it. So I would talk to them and, you know, just ask them questions about like what's important for me to figure out, what's important that, you know, like I need to do and figure out about myself. The number one thing they said was trauma. So if you're having trauma, if you're having a block, if you're needing to figure something out, take time, whether today, tomorrow, or whatever. Just sit there, talk with yourself about it, talk with someone else that you're comfortable with, talk with your partner. Hey, I'm just saying it'll open up your mind to things, because you're important, I'm important, and your feelings are important. Don't ever feel like you should be scared to ask for something, to receive something when you've already given. I'm hoping that you guys are enjoying this talk, because I love this sex talk. You guys have been giving me a lot of suggestions too. Continue to do that. My Instagram is YoGirlKey. If you guys need to go onto my Twitter, it's Black Widow, BLKK for Black and then Widow. Go ahead and send me some suggestions on there. I'm always doing Q&As on my stories, so please interact with that. Let me know if there's anything that you guys would like to hear more, or you guys would like to discuss. That is the 15th episode of Cut the Bullshit, guys, and I'm very excited for what this journey goes to. So on the 16th episode, I will be seeing you guys next week. Very, very, very excited. Everyone have a wonderful week.